insane storage possibilities, actually quite nice graphic cards, and we have loads of stuff going with this case right here. And that's not all, of course. I left it on purpose open so I could show you what I actually did here, and of course you'll have b-roll and everything else. But I wanted to give you some insights about this case and what can it do and what can it actually accommodate inside. So this is Jonesbo N3 NAS case, which can actually accommodate 8 3.5-inch hard drives. And it can go with one 2.5-inch SSD. And if you go with an ITX, because that's the only way you can go with an ITX motherboard, you can add two M.2 SSDs, of course, one at front, one at the back. So there's quite loads of possibilities when we're talking about the storage. Now, I'll try to make this video a bit shorter because I think I could talk for an hour for this case. But here is the thing. So I wanted to place the Sapphire Radeon RX 7600 XT because when you look at the dimensions, it actually fits. But there are loads of stuff to think about before it actually can fit. Now, the case can be disassembled totally, and this is why I left this one open. As you can see, the top cover has mesh filters on the side, and you have an openings. But at some point, they aren't enough. This top here should have been opened as well, and would give you more ventilation for the CPU if you don't run two additional fans at the back as an exhaust to actually push out that accumulated hot air while doing anything. So this is what happened when I benchmarked. Unfortunately, I don't have such small fans to place them at the back to actually grab those, let's say, thermals and stuff similar to those. But regardless of that, we'll get to that point. Now, the power supply. The power supply needs to be installed outside of the chassis. So first you need to remove the chassis and place the chassis, the bracket that holds the power supply outside of the case. And then you have to connect the power supply cable that runs here at the back, and then you can mount it. But that's not all. If you go with the card such as I did, you have to place the card first because you have some hinges here, you have a hinge over here. You can remove these side panels, side bars, basically, with two screws, and you get some sort of a more space. But this case could have been epic totally if it just had couple of more millimeters of space on each side. It's not drastical. It doesn't change the fact that it would still be a compact case. It just gives you an option to use a card such as this one to have proper space, right? So for instance, the first thing that I would notice that I would actually suggest is 2 millimeters or maybe even 5, whatever, to have the possibility not to bend the cables too much for the PCI Express here. Then again, 2 millimeters on this side and on the back, just to have the possibility to mount the GPU. And I'm not saying this, yeah, then we get to the point where you actually can add a larger GPU. So why not add another centimeter or 2 or 5 or 10? No, I'm just saying this because this is the smallest card I have. So yeah, there's that. But so first what I did is I placed the GPU, then I placed the motherboard inside and slide it beneath the GPU to be able to mount it to the PCI Express slot. Then what I did is I placed the power supply. And with the power supply, when we're talking about the EPS cable, you can reroute it around and connect it. The PCI Express cables are really straightforward, and you can do some managing with 24 pin. That's all sorted out. I connected all the IO ports just to see the space. And the cool thing, you have some sort of a 2-layer compartment here in between for the cables. So you can reroute the Molex cable to power up the bay at the bottom. You can reroute the SATA cables. You can reroute the, let's say, those extra bits of USB 3.0, USB Type-C cables that go to your motherboard because the cable is strangely really long. So yeah, but the cool thing, those two cables are really flexible and really thin compared to all other cases that are really hideous, and I know everybody hates those cables. Jonesbo did an outstanding job with those cables right here, and big thumbs up for that because you won't have nightmare being able to manage those because they're really flexible, really thin, and gives you a possibility to reorganize them. So basically, this GPU fits, but there's loads of stress while placing it inside. My suggestion, go with a smaller card. You won't have such headaches that I did because I really wanted to go and use the maximum of the space. And this way, with this graphic card, the thermals didn't go really high. Actually, they were quite alright for the GPU. So next in line, let me show you this. So this is magnetically attached, and I do need to pull it a bit stronger. Cool thing, you have a Jonesbo logo right here on this lever to push it out magnetically. Two parts, two magnets, and two hinges that go inside the dentin part. You have I have two hard drives right here, but you can go up to 8, and you have indication lights here on the front which indicate which hard drive is working. Then we go with the power button with the LED, USB 3.2 generation 2 type C, and you have USB 3.0, and you have audio and microphone jack. Now, when we take into consideration the whole compartment at the back, you can remove the panel as well, which removes two 100 millimeter times 25, so the thickness is 25 millimeter fans. Now that's for the hard drive compartment. For the motherboard compartment, you can add two 80 times 25 fans here at the back. I definitely suggest that because this is the only exhaust that could create something like pushing out the air from the CPU cooler. So I use the Noctua NHD9L and it fits like a glove, so it's really no problem with that. But because of it, because of the way the chassis is designed, the air can't go out that much. So definitely use those two fans and you will see the difference in thermals. Now let's break it down. The dimensions of the case is 233 times 262 times 298. We have 2 millimeter aluminum alloy and the internal chassis is 1 millimeter steel. ITX motherboard with one 2.5-inch SSD near the CPU cooler and the 8 3.5-inch hard drives down below in the second compartment. When we're talking about PCI slot, you have two slots with maximum GPU length equal or less than 250 millimeters. So yeah, there's that. Maximum CPU cooler height equal or less 130 millimeters, and power supply you can use only SFX equal or less 105. I actually use the Fantex Revolt SFX power supply. This one is 750 watts. It is more than enough for this configuration that I have. So I'm using AMD Ryzen 7 7745 Pro and the RX 7600 XT. Next in line, we have front panel grill, which is detachable as you saw with a dust filter, which is great. Then we have server grade hot swappable backplate that is mounted here in between that you actually use to mount the hard drives and adopts the server grade 10 micrometers gold plated SAS hot swappable interface. So all 8 hard drive bays are hot swappable. It works properly. There are no issues. For the back plate, for the PCB board where you connect all the hard drives, we have solid state long life capacitor for stable power supply, Molex connection for the power, so you have two of those, and you have a auxiliary SATA power supply header. Now you also have a front hard drive indicator socket, which actually goes from the front to the back and connects to that PCB board. And you have two fan sockets as well, so one is on each side. The thing is, you have loads of space here at the back where the fans are. And of course, it makes more sense because you have the fans and you don't have to worry about the cables dangling inside the fans because you have front grills already pre-mounted. You have 8 SATA ports, and this is where it comes to the point where ITX boards have either 4 or maximum, if you're lucky, 5 SATA ports. So in these terms, you're limited to that if you go with a dedicated GPU. But if you go with a card that actually supports write fields and where you can connect multiple SATA devices, you can definitely go with this. Because after all, if you plan to fill up the entire bottom chassis and the SATA SSD on the side, you're looking at 9 SATA connections. And that comes to a point where you do have to be careful with the power supply as well. Because, for instance, this SFX power supply has 7 SATA connections and 1 Molex. So yeah, it brings us to the point, can it power everything? It's not that it doesn't have the power to turn on all the hard drives and SSDs on your PC and everything else. But it comes to a point where you actually need two Molex connectors and you need nine SATA connectors if you want to fill everything up. So that comes to a point where some power supplies might not be enough when we're talking about connections. But I just checked again, just in case this power supply actually has three connections when we're talking about SATA and Molex in terms of connecting directly to the power supply. So it kind of spreads to everything else. But it's good that I didn't notice that at first, because I wouldn't even tell you that precaution to actually check that out and to take notice of the connections on the power supply as well, because you might be limited there. Now, what's there left to say? The hard drives are quite easy, as you can see, removable, and the canals here are quite nicely done, because what happens here? You get loads of these straps, well, basically eight, and you get additional rubber grommets. What you can do is connect all of them, so you have screws that actually have spacers just for this rubber part. And since hard drives have three threads on each side, you can basically, if you really want to do that, you can connect two of these black rubber pads on those two last screws, and then the candle on the front one, just so you can pull it out of the chassis. All in all, it's quite straightforward. The cool thing about the rubber pads, or what I wanted to say, is that it stops from vibration. They are anti-vibration pads, and there's no metal to metal or anything similar to that connection when we're talking about hard drive and the chassis. So that is implemented quite nicely. It's really straightforward when mounting them. And here we go. So it just goes like this. The rubber grommets actually have some sort of cutouts, so they actually follow the canals here. And let me just show you. Here we go. So that's one fan right here on the CPU cooler, and two fans here at the back. Unfortunately, you can't control the fan RPM on the fans that are here behind on the in the hard drive cage, in the hard drive compartment. So if they are too loud, and listening to them right now, they could be too loud for you guys that actually prefer a quiet PC or whatever. So just simply swap them with some Noctuas and you're good to go. Now for the benchmarks, I did two different tests for the CPU benchmark and the GPU, because I wanted to give you some insights and ideas about the top chassis and why did I remove it right now to show you something. So the CPU goes up to 91 degrees Celsius and 5000 megahertz clock speed when this top cover is completely removed. The GPU goes up to 64, and this is what, when we're talking about what I mentioned, that this GPU can actually go inside and you can use it for gaming as well, instead of just using it for NAS storage. You can game on it with 64 degrees. 91 without this cover, without the fans on the side. I think the rear fans would improve the heat dissipation and pushing the air out of the chassis. I think it will lower it down to 88, 89 degrees, which for AMD is quite normal. So yeah, but we would get more performance out of it. Now, when I place this chassis, and I do have to mention, we're talking about the CPU that is around 95 to 105 watts TDP. So when you close the chassis, the thermals spike up, go up to 94, eventually touching 95 degrees, and the clock speeds, of course, decrease to 4950 megahertz. The GPU stays basically the same, because the fans are really on this side of the ventilation, so you don't have to worry about it. The only thing that happens when we're talking about the increase of the thermals on the CPU cooler and in general the CPU is that the fans are blowing, the fan on the cooler is blowing towards the rear, right? It's not blowing on the side or anything else, so the fan isn't actually on the touching the side, as for instance, like the fans on the GPU. If, for instance, as already stated a couple of times, if you have two fans at the back that will actually push the air outside, then that's a good solution. The power supply, when we're talking about the airflow, the fan is faced right here. So it collects the air from this part and blows it here, and that's it. This part is also removable, so you can check it out, clean it up. It has a dust filter. Now, the Cinebench scores 85, and it started building up, as already stated, since I always do 10 benchmarks in a row. 85, and it got up to 90 degrees. Clock speed from 4,900 to 4,825. So, of course, as the thermals go up, the clock speeds lower down, and the same thing happens with Cinebench scores, even though I can't complain. So 17,830, and the last one is 17,692. What happens here? The heat, as already stated, accumulates inside the chassis, and you do need to have proper exhaust. That's it. All in all, what I can say, and to conclude now, because I think this video is going a bit too far now, uh, you can squeeze a GPU to its limits, but you will have to be very, very careful, and you'll have to fiddle around. Why I'm saying very careful? Because the PCI Express connection can eventually, if you're not careful, kick some capacitors from your motherboard, or you can scratch the PCI Express slot or whatever. Just be very careful when doing it. So check the limits, check if you can do it. If you can't do it, don't do it. This is really, really delicate, and you really need to fiddle around. So go with a GPU that actually has that proper spacing, and try to go with a bit lower profile, or if you're simply going with something that is pure NAS, SATA connections, you don't have to worry about anything. But there's loads of space, and you have loads of holes, interconnection between the two compartments, so you don't have to worry about anything. The thermals, as I stated, if this top part had some holes with the dust filter, I mean, the case has dust filters literally everywhere on each side of the chassis, which is outstanding. So why not drill, or maybe you could drill it where if you have access to a CNC, drill some holes, place some filter, and it could definitely help you out, because after all, heat rises. And loads of storage capacity, without a doubt. If you're not going with a GPU, if you're going just with hard drives and you want to have this as a HTPC, because it does look quite nice, cool, and clean, swap the fans at the back, which will definitely benefit you with decibel range and decibel noise. And all in all, this case is outstanding. I know I've been talking all sides, negative and positive, but I'm just giving you guys some ideas what you could do to make this case epic, because it really is. I mean, taking into consideration, you can have five hard drives. Let's be honest, in new cases, you can't have five hard drives unless they have dedicated slots on the front or something like that, right? So, five hard drives without the SATA SSD, but then again, you have two M.2 SSDs on your ITX board. Just place these two fans at the back and remove the bottom fans from the compartment, placing some Noctua or Arctic or whatever, which are proven to be quiet. That's it. That's quite straightforward. I mean, you can hear it, right? I think you can. But it's not that, again, drastical. It's not like 100% speed of, I don't know, 120 or 140 fans that you usually have in the case, but you can hear them, and that's definitely that. As I said, an outstanding case. Love the design. Just have to fiddle around, and it is a bit of a work. And it is a bit of a work, so yeah, take that into consideration. But big thumbs up to Jonesbo, and I think the only thing that this case can be in the next version, if it happens, is evolution of this chassis, because it is quite elegant. Really love the design in general. Love the feet at the bottom, because they look like, basically, Jonesbo has this type of feet for their cases in almost every scenario. It doesn't matter too much, but love the design, and this is how it looks. So you just place it here on top, and this is what I was talking about, the cables, but you can close it. You can close it because these are PCI Express cables. Those aren't 12 VH PWR that you have to worry if something will happen if you bend the cables. So yeah, there's that. And let me close this one. Oh, sorry. Let me close this one. Here we go. quite nice, compact, visually appealing, and just follow the instructions that I gave in this video and you'll love the case without a doubt. Guys, the link for the Jonesbo N3 is in the description below. You can fill it up as much as you want with hard drives and everything else. And if this video helped you decide or gave you some tips or whatever it did, hope you can click that subscribe button, like, and notification bell. And to see you next time in the new one. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.